idea of always not being attached.
Yes, yeah.
There's some like paradoxical discernment that's needed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's kind of what I've been gleaning from this Alan Watts book on Zen that I've been reading. Is just like that at the heart of the religion and the practice, if it can even be called a religion, certainly a practice, it is paradox, basically, right?
Yeah, in a way.
But again, you can get attached to that. Yeah. So paradoxical paradoxes, but that it seems to be integral is to understand that to describe nature and reality is paradoxical, and to maybe correct me if I'm wrong, maybe both embrace that a little bit, like through language, but also like really fundamentally recognizes like the limitations of language and how it always will.
I would say I would definitely lean more on like the emphasis being on the limitations of language versus like chasing down paradoxes and like killing somebody to achieve peace or whatever to prove that you know the true dharma or whatever. Yeah. Like I think it's much more about, like there's a saying like the finger pointing at the moon is not the moon.
Right.
Which is like the language and concepts of thought and sensory information are all just things like pointing at true reality.
Yeah.
And just like a major part of practice is just like staying in that understanding. And then from time to time you do experience the ineffable, and you have these views of correct me if I'm wrong again, you have these you glimpse nature, you glimpse your true reality, but it actually shouldn't be about seeking that. You should just recognize the limitations of language, and then sometimes that benefit is there, or even am I already thinking about it too much of what can I get out of this kind of context? I don't know. You sound like, I don't know. It sounds like on the right track to me. Like I'm not, and I'm not like some person who's going to be great at like explaining this stuff. It's just like I've been practicing for a while. I've been to Zendos and stuff. Yeah. Like that's my background.
Yeah, especially that what we're trying to communicate right now is inevitable, and words are only symbolic of what we're even trying to say. We can feel all the vibes here on this beach in where are we?
Morro Bay, California, near San Luis Obispo.
It's we got some otters that are dancing in the water right behind us. Lots of waves, and I see a duck as well in the distance. Speaking on paradoxes, Alan Watts himself. I hope this isn't blasphemous to say, but he would deliver his speeches, but he'd also be kind of drunk.
Yeah, no, I think about that with Watts a lot. Yeah. I mean, I think he's a sort of archetypal example of a, at core, Westerner who gleaned a lot from Eastern thought, but maybe remained a Westerner, or maybe hung on to a part of Eastern thought that emphasizes, or specifically of Zen perhaps, which maybe emphasizes that it's not always about, being the monk, and that rather you kind of do walk your own path. I don't know if you have thoughts on that, Ian.
I don't know what to say exactly about Alan Watts in regards to all that, except I'll just reference like there are rules in Buddhist traditions about like not doing drugs and stuff, like don't drink and things like that.
That's an eightfold path or something. That's right action and stuff.
I don't think that's part of the Noble Eightfold Path, but there's other rules different practices have, like, and there's like it's like a huge religion. There's like many different strains of this religion. But, like, you do have examples of conflict about that. Like, in the Zen tradition in particular, there's a figure called Ikkyu who is, like, recognized within the tradition as, like, having achieved Satori and, like, whatever that means exactly. But he's recognized. But he was, like, a drunk and would see prostitutes and stuff. And it was he was highly heretical to a lot of the established Zen tradition at the time, but there's also like recognition of him at the same time. So it's like, I don't know. I mean, I think it is probably like beneficial to practice to like abstain from all that stuff, but at the same time, like it's if you're getting into this like awareness beyond awareness beyond awareness beyond awareness or whatever, like if you're that locked into getting into that mind state, like I don't think it really should matter whether you're sober or under the influence of something, because like we're always having like sensory input, and it's always being colored by this or that. So in a sense, it doesn't matter, but I think it probably does matter for a lot of practical reasons.
It might be pretentious to say, but even materials and the people around you even serve as an intoxicant in service to your ego, creating a false ego every moment of your life in conjunction with the schizophrenia induced by capitalism. So, that's shout out Mark Fisher.
Yeah, well, so Ian, I know you don't necessarily want to talk too much explicitly on practice, and I won't make you. But I am kind of curious about meditation specifically, because we previously had a really interesting conversation, like where I do TM or did do TM, and I've kind of petered out of doing it because not because I have anything against transcendental meditation, but it never really. I don't know. I still do it sometimes, but it's never really like. A lot of people do TM and then they would never dream of not doing it twice a day for the rest of their lives. I'm not that guy. But I still meditate and I try different things. And we once had a conversation where you were telling me about how, like, within Zen Buddhism at least, like there's a whole debate as to whether or not you need any kind of anchor. With TM, it's the mantra. And I'm just kind of curious, like, do you meditate and how and what are... If you're okay talking about that, because that is a little bit more meat and potatoes practicum. Like, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, do you hit some ooms?
What?
Do you like hit some? Do you say like om and stuff like that?
I don't do that. I mean, I practice in like the Soto Zen tradition, and the goal is to just sit. Yeah. And I guess I would say I use the posture of sitting in like Burmese style and breathing as an anchor. Yeah. I've heard of people talking about anchorless meditation. I have no idea what that's about really. Yeah, I think like this, like sitting down to meditate is like inherently a type of anchor, right? So I kind of don't get what they mean when they say that, but I'm sure we could come to some understanding if I met somebody who practiced like that.
Yeah, it probably gets into a thing where like some people will be like, oh, anything can be meditation, and then it's like, well, sure, but like, I don't know. You get into stupid traps of circles of thought. But one thing that I glean from and I'm curious as an actual practicing Zen Buddhist, what you make of this. You know, this Alan Watts book I'm reading, I've been able to glean some things about it historically, of the history of Zen as well as the practice. I've gleaned, some parts I would probably have to delve more into to really understand. Other parts made a lot of sense. One thing that made a lot of sense was about meditation, and I was watching my cat. And cats just spend a huge chunk of the day just sitting around. Sleep sometimes, but also just sitting around doing nothing. All animals do. Animals just will sit and do nothing, right? And that kind of was insightful to me, like watching animals. And I think this has some correspondence within Zen. It seems like the best and most pure meditation is not done to achieve something. It's not done to achieve Buddhahood or any kind of clarity per se, but rather is getting yourself. I only want to say getting yourself because that's not really what you're supposed to be doing, but rather the state is sitting because there's nothing better to do but then to sit. Seems to be like, to me, in a way that a cat might just naturally do, right, during the middle of the day. If you as a human can get yourself into that organic state, which again is paradoxical, right, but that basic state of just sitting to sit, that is the true meditation, perhaps? Or comment on that, I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. Yeah, there's like people talk about like, oh, an animal is enlightened because he's just like in the moment doing the thing. I have no idea. But the goal of, like in Soto Zen, like it really is, the emphasis is on sitting.
Yeah.
To sit is to be enlightened. Huh. It's like you already are, and you're like I don't know exactly, like stripping down everything to like see that more clearly that you already are.
Yeah,
that's the best way I could put it. But yeah.
You already are. That seems to be the key thing. Is to, and this even they teach you in TM, which I will maybe I'll if you're okay talking. I know you've done like the TM course, right?
No.
Oh, but you've tried it before. Yeah.
All TM is mantra meditation with like some kind of payment plan on top of it. Like literally like that. And I have nothing against mantra meditation. I've done that practice. I think it's different from Zazen.
Yeah.
But TM is like, I don't know why people would pay for somebody to give them a mantra. Like you could just pick any word and it does the thing,
I did it. I don't.
Why do they need to give you their word, Matt?
Listen, I've done it. I don't regret it. I don't besmirch the TM organization per se, but I pretty much agree. Like, I don't regret it because it's David Lynch. It's like, I had to try it out. It's not that much, whatever, and it's not like I only paid once. God forbid anyone gets involved with some recurring payment that they forget about. But I don't think I needed to pay for it. No. I agree. Sorry, what were you asking? They say that it's specific to you, but it's really just they do it based on age, and I tend to agree. I'm not an expert. I tend to agree with Ian. I don't think there's anything that special about the sound vibration. I just don't buy it. Yeah.
Just a quick note on meditation. It's interesting hearing Ian, your take on meditation, and then comparing that to the AA, the Thelema method. You know Thelema?
No, what's that?
Aleister Crowley stuff.
Yeah, Aleister Crowley stuff, but
okay. I guess I'm aware of Aleister Crowley was a guy and he was into black magic or whatever. I don't really know much about that guy.
Exactly. Well, basically all I was trying to get at was that within occultism and trying to become a more powerful wizard, meditation is important to kind of gathering all your personal energy to try to perform magic, and that's why wizards and black magicians, they want you to meditate because it cultivates your own personal energy. And that's interesting because you're saying that you basically just sit to meditate and
well, the goal is it's very hard to just sit. To just sit. I don't know if I've ever done it.
Yeah.
Your mind is throwing so much stuff at you because it gets so bored.
Right.
And you really clear out the gunk, and I'll even start seeing, like if I do open eye meditation for long enough, I'll just start seeing, swirling patterns on the wall and stuff. It's there's a lot going on. I don't think I've ever been able to just sit.
Right. So it's like the old, this is a classic Buddhist and even just mental health adage, you have to let the best way to clear muddy water is to do nothing, right? And I feel like with meditation, again, we get in traps when we talk about this too much. I don't want to make it seem like it's about doing anything, right?
That's fine.
But
we could just have a conversation, and people are obviously delusional podcast people.
This is true.
That's fine. We can listen back to it and just think about how lost we sounded.
Yeah, perhaps lost, but no. What I was gonna say is I feel like again, with all the caveats at the limits of language and my own limited understanding here, the purpose of meditation is to let that water clear. However, recognizing that the water probably never, it may or may not actually ever clear. But even just by sitting, you are starting to see over the fence that there is such a thing as clarity, even if you don't achieve that clarity. To be in the state of you're in the right direction when you're thinking about it in those terms of water clearing. There is a clarity there, and it's not about suppressing the thoughts. It's about just letting them pass. And I think that's the best most of us can really do in this lifetime, seemingly.
And then getting into finally who Ian is. This is Strange Flows with Ian. And Ian is an author, a screenwriter, a filmmaker, a tech person. You can do programming.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So getting into the literature, though, regarding the meditation practice, do you feel that it helps you with your writing? And Matt and I have read your work, and we can kind of get into how your spiritual life helps your book that you released that Matt read. Matt, would you talk about the book a little bit before we hear?
Oh yeah. Jackpot by Ian Sears. Yeah, yes. You can pitch. It's available on Amazon, and you're gonna have some physical copies in a bookstore soon, right?
Yeah. It's Kepler's Books in Menlo Park. Just picked it up. I'm hoping that's the first of many.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you want me to give you the blurb? It's
sure. That'd be helpful.
This isn't what's on Amazon, but basically it's this book about these two guys who invent putting a sombrero and maracas on a cactus and become millionaires overnight. And then one of them can't deal with the corporate life and becomes a poet. But then he becomes massively successful as a poet and gets a movie deal. But then, his life in Hollywood takes a dark turn. And it keeps going from there. But, it's about these guys who succeed and just succeed over and over again. But things are life still has problems.
Right. Well, I think to go back to your question, Evan, you're asking about how the spiritual life helps with the writing, and we found it interesting. I think that and some of the short stories on your Substack as well, like they're kind of about They're about the material realm, and they're about success within the material realm, and they're about commerce to a degree. And there's a lot of and this is not just your book; it goes for stories in general. In general, there. A lot of stories are about stuff that happens, obviously, in the physical realm, but specifically within commerce and success, and sort of how that compares and contrasts with, to the extent you want to talk about this, the spirituality of Zen Buddhism, which is basically about detachment from not just the physical world, but from everything.
Material goods. I mean, that's what we gleaned. Yeah. That's what we gleaned, just coincidentally from what he had read and what I had read. Do you think maybe that's like just a shadow reflection, so to speak, of like your relationship to Buddhism and then like your work?
No, I don't think that, but maybe you're right. But I don't think about it at all. Like, yeah. I mean, I wrote I wrote the start of Jackpot at least before I ever like started practicing Buddhism. And in general, I will say there's only one work I've done that I feel like was explicitly informed by Zen practice. The rest is just like, I mean, I practice Zen, and then like I write and I live my life. I gotta have a job and stuff too, and it just helps kind of with everything. Yeah. Maybe at the start I would think, I'm gonna meditate, and it'll clear up my mind, and I'll have some good creative ideas. Like definitely back in college, I had kind of a mindset like that, but that's kind of fallen away. But I would still say it helps and definitely informs it on some level. But there was only like one work where I feel like I was like explicitly thinking like this is like a Zen, like the movie I directed, Summer Tunnel. Yeah. I really was thinking of it as a Zen movie in a lot of ways. And there's scenes of people like meditating, a guy meditating and having like visions in his meditation, and then the whole movie can kind of be seen as like one big dream that points to a reality that makes a little bit more sense than the movie does. So, yeah.
So I've seen Summer Tunnel. I enjoyed it. It's very much shades of $1 Million Extreme, who I knew. No, and David Lynch, which you have told me were you're kind of your two big influences. So it's weird. It's weird in a good way. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. No, I'm not this. No, not at all. But I'll just say MDE was an influence in terms of like these guys had nothing, and they made funny stuff, and they built themselves up, and they ended up on Adult Swim. And I had no idea about their politics and stuff when I was a fan back in the day. I just thought these guys are edgy and funny, and they made it from YouTube to Adult Swim. And they were a big influence on my life in that regard. Yeah. I'm not going to comment on the politics, but David Lynch was more of a stylistic influence for sure. And in terms of the process of art, he's been like maybe the biggest influence on me. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, it's worth noting with MDE, even though they're back together, it's mostly just Sam Hyde, has his politics, but the rest of the dudes, I don't even think they're like that right wing or whatever. So it's an unfortunate thing with MDE where it gets shoehorned politically because of Sam Hyde, but it was always about a lot more. Yeah.
He kind of did it. He did it to himself. I mean, I love him. I'll watch whatever they do, but man, he got his own show canceled at the end of the day, and I'll stand on that. But I wish it didn't go down the way it did. I think American culture would be in a better place if they got to make season 2 back then.
Yeah, season 2 and 3. Sorry, went off a little off the rail there, but what I was gonna ask, and I hate to ask questions like this, but because I've seen Summer Tunnel, and I don't think it's that I didn't get it. But I'm just very intrigued by what you said. I enjoyed it. I mostly took it and I was like, okay, this is weird stuff, entertaining, funny, but weird. What? And you don't have to say it explicitly if you don't want. But what would you say, like the higher reality that is ultimately gleaned from Summer Tunnel is?
Like, what's the point of Summer Tunnel? I guess is part of what I don't know. I think it's just life in Palo Alto, to be honest. Yeah. Like this. Yeah. There's all sorts of things in that movie that I'll never expect anybody to understand that are clearly like we, the people making the movie, were projecting like unconscious elements of ourselves and our relationships onto that movie as we were making it, and we didn't understand at the time. And there's things in that movie that show clearly what was going on between all of us that I don't think we could see clearly at the time. Which sounds kind of self-indulgent, but
it's fascinating, though. Yeah, because I don't know if you wanted to comment too much on this, but I know that it's sort of it didn't end totally well between everyone involved, right? You don't have to talk about this if you don't want, but yeah. Do you want me to cut out even bring it up?
No, I'm just not going to talk about that.
Oh, good. Yeah.
That's okay. I mean, I think that's not self-indulgent at all, to the extent in which when you're making films with friends, like it's a beautiful thing in that making a film with friends is really fun. And like,
it was.
It
was like, I loved every minute we spent filming that film.
Do you think you'll ever want to make another film and like directing and like doing a lot of the production stuff really hands-on like that, or maybe just stick with screenwriting?
No, 100%. I mean, look, if I could get a screenplay sold and made, that's cool, but I'm actually way more interested in just like making money and then getting back into like directing like indie films again and not trying to have some career in Hollywood. I think that's a better path for me.
Yeah, you might know that Matt and I have been working on a film. It's going to happen.
Yeah, I told Ian about it in very early days that I was starting to toy with it back in December. Yeah.
Yeah, filmmaking is fun as hell. If you were to have a crew and you had the dream, this film that you wanted to make, and what you just spoke about, how many people do you think would be there, and would they all be your close friends or just professionals, or to execute what you really want? Do you have any ideal for that kind of concept that you could think like that?
I've had like sketches of an idea. I'll just say this: I'm not ready to make another movie right now. I'm working on another book.
Nice.
But when I'm ready, I want to make another movie kind of in a similar way to Summer Tunnel, but much more organized and scoped out and funded better.
Yeah.
But what I think I'd like to go further exploring in is like, we made this movie using the people we had and the places we had access to, and we wrote around that. And so there's something about like the place itself that informed the writing process that I don't think happens when you just like write a screenplay and like try and get money to make it happen. Like I'm not saying never, but it's so different, like working within those like very real constraints and knowing like, okay, we can go break into these tunnels and film down there. So like, how do we write about this cool location? Like, how do we work that into the movie?
That's certainly the wisest way to produce a film when you don't have any money, right? Or
maybe. I don't know. I mean, dude, this movie was a freaking mess. Like filming it, it started as a 15-minute movie, and we just wrote more scenes over the next year and a half or so, and it turned into an 80-minute movie. But it was a mess. Like, really.
You said there was one version, and then you recut another version about a year later, right? The Redux, which is now that's the definitive version. I'm not saying there's multiple versions because there's one true vision, right? But yeah.
If you ask, it's the definitive version. If you ask me, the director, yeah. But other people may have a different opinion, which is fine. Both versions are available. But the director's cut, director's Redux, I called it. It's really like the first 5 minutes and the last 5 minutes have been edited with very minor tweaks to the rest of the film, so they're not that different from each other. I just think the film just works a little bit better the way I re-edited it.
Yeah, I've only seen your version, but it certainly works well, so I wouldn't be surprised. How are we feeling? Are you guys pretty cold? Are you pretty cold?
I feel good. I'm not cold.
I'm all right, actually.
You're all right? Yeah. Okay, good. I didn't want to. Because I think it's a vibe, and we should keep going. But
come over, Robert.
Yeah.
We have philosopher and theorist Robert Stark with us as well. He's over there. You're welcome to come hang out with us, Robert.
I wonder where Daniel is, but that's all right.
And we also have Daniel, another friend of ours here, but Robert doesn't want to come over, but that's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. This is kind of true.
I would like to talk about Ian's book more. If you would like to indulge in that more, Matt, since you actually read it.
Yeah, well, I told Ian, maybe I'll cut this out, because maybe it is good to just pretend that I read it, but, I have not, I unfortunately was not able to finish it. I will. But, no, would it be fair to call the book a comedy?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah, 100%. It's like Looney Tunes.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it read that way. I didn't want to, and I'm not saying that wasn't clear or anything. Just that I wanted to make sure I wasn't being too what's the word? I didn't want to be irreverent, because obviously there is a deeper point there too, right? But it's fundamentally comedy, and what are kind of some of your comedic inspirations behind it?
Looney Tunes and SpongeBob, and just like joking around with my friends. Like the whole book started from like the third time I ever did acid, and my friends and I were just joking around about like who invented putting a sombrero and maracas on a cactus.
Was there actually a cactus with a sombrero on in the picture, or with maracas as well, of course?
I have no idea. I don't remember at all. We even had some whole cactus dance we came up with that day. It was like, but I wrote the first 3 pages that day of like chapter 2, which used to be chapter 1. And yeah, it's just like, I don't know, just stuff I thought was funny, and I kept going with it. And then it's like, I just wish I wanted to like write a type of literature that like doesn't take itself so seriously and like be so rigid to the rules of reality. Like it's a cartoon.
Yeah, no, I like it a lot. Where did the cover come from? Because it's a nice cover, and it fits this tone you're talking about. I did want to ask about that.
I'm ashamed to admit that I made it in DALL-E.
Is that AI?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it looks good. I don't know. I feel like AI art, when done with the right intentions, is legit. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, so there's something to craft, but like if you envision it, much like the characters in your book envisioning a cactus with a sombrero on, and you put the right parameters in, yeah, it's a creative product, even if it's not gonna be in a museum.
Did you regarding the AI? You were just like, fuck it, I'm just gonna do some AI cover, or what was your? Just curious, like not that I care.
It started when I was like publishing short stories and then serially publishing Jackpot on Substack. I wanted images for it, and AI had just come out, not just, but you know what I mean. And the one I got was good enough and looked kind of like it looks more like a painting than an AI generated art usually looks like. That's like, so I don't like telling people that I made it in AI, because some people have thought that I painted it myself or had a painter do it, and it's like disappointing for them when they find out it's just AI. But yeah, I just thought it looked good, and then like by the time the book came out, I was like, I actually like this enough, I'll just use this. And I did DALL-E extend to like make the back cover, and it worked out. I mean, I designed like every part of the book myself. It's self-published.
No, it's a lot of nice. My books, well, my second book anyway, is largely the same way, and it's contrary to the stigma of self-publishing, it's actually a very good feeling to know that you handled every element and the marketing, isn't it? I mean, it feels cool. There's more control, because a lot of like publishers have like a lot of real writers, or real people writing with publishing companies, have no control over their cover, and it's kind of nice to have that control.
Yeah, I think the cover is important, and most covers are trash, so like it's better to have control over that.
No, and I think maybe I already verbalized this, but like I really did not realize that it was AI art. Like, it looks good. Like, I have a pretty good nose for what is AI art usually, and your cover's pretty good. But other than publishing on Amazon, well, you do Amazon KDP, right? Or no?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and it's on Ingram Spark now, because bookstores won't order through Amazon, so I put it on there too.
Yeah, that's good to know, because my book, the Black Album, which I'll give you a copy of later, is only through Amazon KDP. I mean, I'm not really holding my breath for that to get into bookstores anyway. Yours is a much better fit for, if someone opened my book, they'd be like, what the fuck is this person talking about?
I'll just be specific. I hope Kepler's isn't listening to this, but it's not about the quality of my book. It's because I won a short story contest in 2015, and I did a reading at Kepler's as part of winning that, and I put that in as part of my pitch and said, like, oh, it's gonna, if you care, I gave a reading here, it'll be really poetic if you carry my book, it'll inspire competition among the next generation of South Bay writers, and so that's what got through the filter. It's not like anybody read my book and was like, whoa, this guy's a genius, let's carry his book. It's like, you got to just play the game. You got to
play the game, as you said. You got to be your own advocate. So more power to you. Yeah, that's really cool. I not to get too degenerate and druggy, but I don't think it's degenerate at all, and hopefully the conversation will continue in that vein. You wrote the first 3 pages, the first chapter, now the second chapter of Jackpot on acid, and we did want to talk a little bit about LSD and shrooms, specifically psychedelic drugs, and with Buddhism as well, like whether or not the insights one can glean. What was the word you used? Satori. Is it a Satori state? I'm not. I may be misusing that word.
I'm on team acid is Satori, but a lot of people would disagree, and then a lot of people might agree, but put a bunch of asterisks and warnings around that.
I mean, the asterisks and warnings seem necessary. Obviously, people have misused or just somewhat carelessly used acid a lot. I'm not just talking about bad trips, but like you hear about people using it as a party drug, which seems ridiculous to me. It does seem, though, just kind of scientifically what it's doing to your brain and the perspectives people have, like, yes, there's something there, and, like, who's to say, like, if you have a real insight into reality, into your nature, it is, of course, it's not real just because there was a chemical involved. But, there is a danger, right, to getting that without sort of doing the work or without knowing what's going on. I think for people like us, obviously I'm going to, validate my own behavior or whatever, I think it's an interesting shortcut, right? But for people who literally have no idea, who have very little sense of like what could be going on spiritually, it's a hazard, if not an outright bad idea, right?
Yeah, I mean, I just think in 2024 we're so disconnected from nature and so like hopelessly addicted to phones and stuff. Like, you kind of need this shortcut to shock people into like changing their life. Like, I just think fundamentally psychedelic use, whether you are opposed to it or think it's an integral part of your practice, like, it needs to be respected as a part of an American Zen tradition in 2024. Yeah. It's so intertwined with the history of Zen being introduced to this country and how we practice it here and how people get into it. I just think it needs to be considered as part of the tradition.
Right, and we're it's clear to, we're recording this literally on the West Coast. We're Morro Bay, as Evan highlighted, on the beach here behind the rock. We're looking at the Pacific Ocean. We're looking at otters and pelicans.
We're about 10 feet or so from being drenched by water. Yeah, we're close.
I hope the audio turns out okay.
I think it will. It's gonna. Evan's doing a good job holding the mic close, so it'll be fine. I can denoise it, but
it's gonna be great.
It's gonna be great. And I'm talking about this Alan Watts book. Alan Watts, born in England, but was very much a California man. Yeah, I mean, you talk about the American Zen tradition and being influenced by psychedelics, but it's also specific to California too. And it's just, you feel the vibes. It's all here on the West Coast, right?
Here's what I really need to know from Ian is that Ian, tell me like what acid is in your understanding of it. So it's like a square that they put a chemical on it. I want to hear because to me, right, I understand what you're saying, but I want to hear in regards to like they would use it for like MK Ultra like experiments on people. Then some people take too much and they break through too far and become too smart. So tell me, like, in regard, like, do you think it like expands your mind? Literally, it creates new neurons type shit. That's what shrooms do. But tell me, like, in your own words, like, how you interpret it, like, what it does to you, and, like, what happens to you, and, like, what it actually is, maybe chemically or spiritually, what it does to you.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I've been completely duped, and I'm actually, like, a stooge for MK Ultra now, and, like, somebody can just say the magic word, and because I've done enough acid, like, I'm a sleeper agent. No, I mean, I don't, like, it's a drug. It's a thing that you put on a piece of paper or in a gel tab, or people carry it in a liquid. I've never done it that way. But it's like, it helped me so much in my life when I was 19. It really turned things around for me. And I don't know, man. Like, if you were interested, just like do it yourself. Like, unless you have some like history of schizophrenia in your family or something. Like, I don't know. It's very powerful. It's a very positive influence on my life, even in the trips that didn't go so well. I think I got through it okay. I've been around people where it went very south, it's definitely something you gotta respect. Like, I've been in situations where someone was losing their mind, and we had to call in an authority on the subject to help us out. Like, I'm not going to go into too much detail there, but like this stuff can be very dangerous too. I really don't want to downplay that.
Yeah, certainly, but I must also stress that in life, growth can't happen without some muscle tears type shit. So like, it makes sense. You're right. Like what you explained. Like sometimes it is bad, but it leads to a better understanding of yourself. I guess if you handle it correctly, like transmuting the bad energy into good. Wouldn't you say kind of like that vibe? Or?
Yeah. I mean, I think specifically something I could say is like in the West, I think we get very caught up in words, whether that's like logic or clinging very hard to a scientific worldview, which is not like in an unscientific way where you mistake the map of science for the territory of reality.
Yeah.
But I think even like just going back to like Protestantism and stuff, it's like getting way too into using the words of the Bible as the religious authority.
Yeah.
Like we're just so like word centric here.
Absolutely.
And it leads to a type of neurosis and just like stifling that can be very hard to understand if you've just been like living in it your whole life. And so I think it kind of helped me like break out of some types of paradigms like that were not helpful to me.
Yeah. How much of I don't want to keep bringing back to Buddhism. You said you don't want to over talk about this or maybe even talk about it much at all. But would you? I guess two-pronged question: Did psychedelics influence you getting into Buddhism? One, and then two, because we didn't actually go over this on the air. When and how did you become a Buddhist?
I mean, yeah, it definitely influenced me.
Yeah.
I had a professor, a psychology professor, who was giving lectures, and some of his lectures, it was a class about personality, but some of his lectures touched on psychedelics, some of his lectures touched on the Buddhist perspective on personality, and from there I read Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and it just really resonated with me, and I was like I don't know, like an atheist at the time, but like an agnostic at least, and just like my inner life was kind of a mess, and I was just like, going back to trying to go back to Christianity was like definitely not going to work.
Right.
And I was just like, this is it. Like, this is the way to go. Wow. And it definitely has been ever since. It's like, I'll just leave it at that. There's more I could say, but I'll just leave it at that.
I love that. So this, you can leave it at that. I'm just gonna like lightly poke two things you said, and then we can move on entirely. This was in college, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I did, and I never even, like, once I started practicing, I probably waited like at least like a year and a half or 2 years before I even told anybody that I'd now like identify as a Zen Buddhist, which is kind of like a silly thing to even say in a way, but because I just didn't want to be this like annoying guy who's like, oh my god, I'm all into Buddhism now, guys. Like,
pretty much the same. I mean, I'm not a practicing Zen Buddhist at this point, but it's influenced me, as has yoga, as has many things. But if I were to like really feel like, okay, I actually am a Zen Buddhist now, I would also be close to the best about it. I'm not saying it's bad to not be. It's just like, yeah, I get it. Like, there's a certain people will be like, okay, yeah, of course you're a white guy who's a Zen Buddhist, but there's a lot more to it than that.
It's like any new thing. It's like you've been vegan for a week and you're constantly going on and on about your new diet. It's like, shut up, dude. Just eat your food. Like,
but you did, yeah, no, totally. You did grow up Christian.
Yeah, I mean, I come from a Catholic background.
We've talked about this, right? I have. Yeah, I did as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and I went to Anglican. When I was 7, we moved to Australia, and I went to an Anglican school the whole time I lived there.
I won't, because I myself don't love to always talk about this, but yeah, I'll just say, and you can comment to the extent you want, I share the sense that like I don't dislike Catholicism or Christianity, but it's like it is kind of hard to just like go back to it, right? Unless you're gonna do this sort of Kierkegaardian leap of faith thing. But I don't know. One thing I like about Eastern thought, as well as certain esoteric Western traditions, is like it does, again, comment to this to the extent that you want or not at all. It does feel a little more, tied in with a more scientific perspective on reality. You talk about like basically being quasi-atheist. Like I do think a lot of these more esoteric practices, there's some silly stuff you can come across too, but for the most part, I'm using a lot of words. What I really want to say is, I'll just say with Buddhism in particular, it seems it meshes really well with nature as we observe it, which Christianity doesn't always so much, in my opinion.
I mean, I don't know what to say here exactly, but I'll just say one comment I have is like I think there's dharma or like spiritual truth or like existential poetic truth of life existence in any religious practice, but. And all of these practices should, in my opinion, be ways of trying to transmit this dharma to people or getting them to awaken to it. But I think a lot of the mechanisms for transmission turn into these dead things that make no sense and don't help people.
Completely. That's a very, very good way of putting it. Only other thing I wanted to poke on what you said is the book Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. I suppose this is it's a fairly common maybe book for people to start with. We were in that bookstore again in Morro Bay here. We were wandering around earlier. Evan and I went to a bookstore. We found the Zen section just because it was there. We knew we'd be talking about this today, and we pulled a book off just randomly. And I'm Evan, correct me if I'm pretty sure it was Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind.
Are you serious?
I think I'm like 90% sure it was. Who wrote that again?
Shunryu Suzuki, who founded the first Zen monastery back in America back in the 60s.
I'm all but certain it was that, which maybe is not the biggest. Maybe it's a real synchronicity, or maybe was that a book that would be in any Zen section, probably.
Yeah, totally. That's definitely one of like the biggest books in American Zen. Yeah,
that's
so
funny.
I'll stop short of saying it's like a miracle that's the book we pulled, but it's definitely a little bit uncanny because there was a lot of books there.
Yeah, I pulled it out in an effort to do some bibliomancy about. I just pulled to a random page that I felt was speaking to me to find something to talk to you about in that book.
It was something we just read one line, which is an inadequate understanding. It was something about how like thought and action that's like from your.
I can sum it up.
Yeah, you can sum it up for me, please.
Basically, in summary, it said you don't have to worry about your shadow if you're working in right action, and
something about leaving traces too. Like confused, if you act from like the more confused part of your mind, like it will leave a trace which you will become attached to. But like perfect action leaves no trace and leaves no shadow. Something to that effect.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It reminded me of Hinduism. I myself am pretty attached to Hinduism, and there's a lot of kind of overlap with Hinduism and Buddhism, being so close geographically. Do you try to live your life with right action?
Yeah. Don't you?
Yeah, dog, you know it.
The wrong thing.
I'd be doing right action all the time. But, right action also means speaking properly and not saying things like, yeah, dog, or like...
Why?
Why
Well,
indeed?
If we're being super strict about it, I feel like it would have to do with speaking eloquently and speaking... But maybe it just means speaking within who you really think you are.
Right. I feel like that kind of, and again, I don't want to ambulate too much on Buddhism or talk too much about practice, but like maybe that sort of ambulates around. With Buddhism, you have a very strict practice for some people within monasteries, and like the whole thing of like getting rapped on the shoulder if your posture's wrong. But then it's also really just about spontaneity at the same time. So one of many paradoxes is that, right? Like the line between spontaneity and rules. I won't make you talk about it much more, but
yeah. I just I wonder sometimes if when people get whacked on the shoulder for bad posture, if it's almost like a painful joke sometimes. Like, what if they have perfect posture and it's just more about like training them for the endless subversion of life, Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we don't do that type of practice in the West. It's like considered abusive and like probably is in some people's hands, but like
a later rap. Yeah, no.
Here's a question I just want to ask now. Matt's going to pee into the ocean. He's going to do it very responsibly into a corner.
Why don't we take a time out then?
Okay, we can take a time out.
Should I not be doing that?
Maybe not.
Maybe not. You're right.
We should just walk over to the bathroom.
Yeah. No, but let's just keep recording for at least 15 minutes, and I'm fine.
Okay.
I just like the idea of being on a rock, but that's my own.
Okay, so he's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. Okay. Here's the question. No, hopefully we can keep. Anyway, here's the question I wanted to ask. Have you ever had any ultra spiritual experiences not on drugs? Like, have you seen a ghost or any aliens, or did you have an out of body experience? You can do drugs too, but that made you believe in other worlds, other dimensions, stuff like that. You're welcome to think about it for a moment.
I mean,
or life is just a spiritual experience.
I think the more I practice, the more I don't know, what does spiritual mean exactly.
Like you saw a ghost.
I don't think I've seen a ghost. I mean,
maybe you're meditating.
You get the feeling there's this idea of like the universe being one big mind, you know, like because when there's no separation between anything, and like we have these minds that take in information and like do stuff with it, and like we have very complex behavior. It's like it's all one big system, and so you kind of get this feeling of the universe, like all of it being alive in some way, instead of like having this distinction between living and dead, or living and inanimate. There's like kind of like a type of poetry to life that borders on psychosis that I think I've become a lot more open to. Just to keep it abstract. Yeah.
That's certainly helpful. It helps put life into perspective and in all its complexity. And then moving on from that topic, aliens. Have you ever seen an alien? Do you have any beliefs in aliens whatsoever? Do you ever think about that?
I don't know. I mean, they got to be out there, like statistically, but I don't think I've had any alien encounters.
Okay, I see. We'll briefly get into this. I don't want to get too deeply into this, but an ideal American government, would it involve more Buddhism or Buddhist practices or Buddhists in office, or do you think American politics is largely Christian? Not to get too deeply into this.
I think
you can just skip this one.
I don't know about like a government for all of America structured like that, but I do think there's like a strain of American culture that, like, if it had its own country, it would be interesting to see it founded on like Zen practice or Taoist philosophy as kind of like an underpinning for a constitutional framework, like a cultural framework. I think I have these like crackpot ideas about how like the original mission of Columbus was to go trade with the East, and we got kind of distracted for a while with like making cigarettes and clothes for people and like conquering continents, and then like World War II, like the Pacific Front. But even before then, like when Commodore Perry opened up Japan, you know, that was kind of like the fulfillment of Columbus's mission.
Yeah. And
so there is this like strain of the American people whose destiny it is to like engage with the East. They were shedding the Christian framework of Europe already. They're shedding the monarchist framework, and like this, like reaching some kind of fusion with what the East has to teach us is like they're like what part of Western culture has been heading towards for hundreds of years.
And we have it probably better than anywhere here in California, I have to say. Not to romanticize California too much, because we have our issues here too, but I do, all hippie jokes aside, you know, I do really like that I live somewhere where there's like a lot of yoga, and where this is an ongoing process, I feel like, of kind of engaging with, and it's involved in so many bad cliches about hippies and sort of like ultra liberal whatever. But I've been saying this in different contexts, saying with psychedelics too. I think there's this perception that like New Age kind of been there, done that, you know, Eastern thought, you know, it happened. It's like passé in the West. But I am of the opinion that we've barely started to really scratch the surface of what psychedelics being one thing, but then like fusion of Eastern and Western thought being another. Yeah. I think we've barely scratched the surface of what that could really look like, and I kind of still think it's the future over a long enough time frame. Yeah,
100%, and it's definitely only just started. Like like two critiques I could have right now of like American Buddhism is one, it's not really set up for like raising a family in the tradition. It's just set up for you as an individual. You come to the you come to the Zendo at 5:30 in the morning, and then you go on with your day or whatever, or you come on like a Monday at 7 p.m. or whatever. But it's not; these places aren't like big enough to really like serve as full-on community centers. Yeah. It's more like going to the gym for an individual.
Right.
So I think that they need to step it up from that, and then also like it's very sad to see how much politics has infected a lot of messaging coming from the core Zen institutions. Like it's very like I don't know, vote Democrat is the vibe, and it's just like, even if I like think the same way as people on certain political issues and stuff, I just think that is like so not the place. It's so not the place to be talking about this stuff. And it really, they're like people who engage in that. If you're like a head of a Zendo telling people to vote for Kamala Harris, like are you really that different from like the people practicing Imperial Way Zen, like supporting the troops in World War II for Japan? Like, are you really that different? Like, I don't know. I don't think so.
I agree. Can I ask a really ignorant question, which is like, what happens at a Zendo? I know you didn't want to talk about this, and I just keep going back, but I'm very curious. What happens at a Zendo?
You go and you practice. You know, it depends on the Zendo, but usually it's some mix of like, you show up. There's like cushions and stuff that are set up well for you to meditate on. There's a very formal Zen practice where, like, you know, you walk with your hands in a certain position and you sit down and you bow at all the right times. And then somebody rings a bowl, and you all sit zazen. Maybe it's split up where you sit zazen and you do some walking meditation, then you sit more zazen, and then you're done. Sometimes they'll give readings from the sutras or some Zen book or something. I mean, it's all a big mishmash because it's so early in the West, but it's just stuff like, it's just like trying to rip off the Japanese like traditions and use them out of context and like just all practice Zen together. And I think that's great. Like, I think that's the core of it. And the Zen centers I've been to, the one in Seattle Zen Center, and Angel City Zen Center, did not wade into politics, like, really at all, in their official talks and stuff. So just shout out to them for that. And I don't know. Yeah.
No, thank you. I was curious. Yeah. Zen is most widely practiced in Japan today. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but I mean, it just means like. It comes from Chan, which is Chinese tradition.
I know it's, so, ultimately, and it's just communism sort of stamped that out a bit.
I have no idea. Probably not, to be honest. I have no idea, though.
Okay, yeah. No, I didn't want to get too far into history. I just wanted to lightly touch on that. To go back to literature, Jackpot is out, but you are also writing a new book. You don't have to. You can say as much or as little about the new book as you want, but is it the same genre, and what are your kind of general plans for it?
It's much darker. It still has a lot of comedic elements, but it's more of like a traditional literary fiction type of ballpark. It's about a very naive guy living with a very manipulative music manager trying to make it in Hollywood, and his misadventures trying to break into the music industry.
Yeah, is it at all, I don't want to say is it at all autobiographical, but I was kind of...
It's not autobiographical.
Gotcha. One thing, I don't know if you want to talk about this on the pod, but I am kind of just intrigued by you can talk about it as much or as little. I remember your kind of personal story, and of course you don't live in LA anymore, so maybe it's still a somewhat of an unfulfilled dream, but I always liked your story about making a good amount, it's kind of like Jackpot a little bit, right? Making a lot of money on Dogecoin, and then moving to LA to screenwrite.
Man, should we do that one over dinner?
Do you want to, or do you want to talk about it at all? I don't know.
There's not much to talk about. I mean, I was just...
Your story, I guess.
I was unemployed, recently unemployed. I was applying for jobs and stuff, trying to figure things out. And then my friend made a bunch of money off GameStop one day, and I was
GameStop?
No, he made the money off GameStop, and then I was like, I'd just finished the first draft of Jackpot that day. The same day he made a bunch of money off GameStop. I came downstairs all excited, like, whoa, I just finished this book, and then my friend was like, whoa, I just like made X amount of money on GameStop, and I was like, shit, I gotta figure something out, and I was just kind of stewing up at night, and I saw some Reddit post about Dogecoin, and I threw a month's rent at it, and it worked out.
Yeah, I got into Dogecoin too late, and I lost about $300, but I'm glad it worked better for you. Evan, you made a little bit, right?
I did.
It's, it could be kind of a curse to make money for nothing. I'll just say that.
You got to pay taxes on it once you sell the stock back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so there's the capital gains tax.
That's not what I meant, but we can leave it at that.
That too, yeah. All right.
All right, yeah.